probably don't need to tell you this, but a year is a very long time, and a lot can happen over the course of a year, especially in the world of football, where everything's all about what have you done for me lately. Short term memory is a very real phenomenon when it comes to the beautiful game. If we go back just 12 months ago, Manchester City were in the middle of celebrating their fourth consecutive Premier League title, something that had never been done before. The club's fifth and sixth seasons and their sixth overall since Pep Guardiola joined the club in 2016. After the best season of his career, Phil Foden was awarded the Premier League Player of the Season. They started calling him the Manchester Messi. Erling Haaland did what he always does and claimed his second consecutive Premier League Golden Boot. Safe to say, things were good in Manchester City. And then, before we knew it, all the partying was over. The 2024-2025 season came and served as a necessary humbling to Pep Guardiola and Man City, as they went trophyless for the first time since the 2016-17 season. Coincidentally, Pep's first season with the club.
But you've got a cut, and apparently some others.
Yeah. With my finger here, with my nail.
That's fine.
I wanna hurt myself. Yeah. Good night.
It'll be okay.
This was only the second time in Pep's entire managerial career across his time coaching in England, Germany, and Spain that he failed to win a trophy. As the saying goes, when you're at the top, you become the topic. The entire world seemed to love seeing Pep's Manchester City squad fail after such an insane run of form across England for the past 6 or 7 years. The reality is, for so many people, especially fans of the other major clubs in England, this was time for celebration as they felt they finally had a chance of winning trophies and having their time to celebrate. For some it was, most notably Tottenham, Newcastle ending decades-long droughts, and for others, not quite. However, I would probably advise the fans of those clubs to hold off on all the celebrating just a little bit. Going into this new season, I believe this Manchester City side and Pep Guardiola are ready to show the world exactly who they are and remind everybody of what they're capable of. And here's why. Whether you love him or hate him, there's no denying the fact that Pep Guardiola, at very least, is on the Mount Rushmore of football managers. To disagree at this point is purely emotional. His tactical approach to the game that prioritizes dominating possession and positional football has genuinely changed the entire sport of football, in a similar way to how Steph Curry has now influenced the entire sport of basketball to be centered around shooting from as far away from the basket as possible. Things that once upon a time sounded like crazy, radical changes to the beautiful game have now become the norm, with countless managers around the world doing their best Pep impersonations with only a fraction of the results and success to show for it. Pep has, by far, the most trophies won by any manager since the year 2000, with 40, and he didn't even begin coaching the Barcelona first team until 2008. Other managers like the great Jose Mourinho and Carlo Ancelotti, who have been coaching since the 90s, have trophy cabinets in the high 20s, and this isn't at all an attempt to downplay those legendary coaches or what they've accomplished, but I'm simply reminding everybody of how absurd Pep's run as a manager has been. The only way to reach a trophy count so ridiculously high is to win on a consistent basis, which Pep most definitely has everywhere he's gone. As I said before, Pep has only had 2 seasons in his entire career as a top-flight manager where he failed to win a trophy. Before last season's disaster of a campaign, the previous was during his first year at Manchester City. Across the 16 seasons since Pep Guardiola became a top-flight manager, he's won the league in 12 of those seasons, which is a 75% title-winning percentage. Stay with me. Not a single manager in football history has that win percentage across individual matches, never mind league titles. In other words, Pep wins titles at a rate higher than most managers, if not all, win individual matches. It's a pretty ridiculous standard to live up to each season. Now, I'm well aware that each season is completely unique, but if we're going to use the past as a reference point for what to expect in the future, I think all of England and perhaps all of Europe could be in a lot of trouble next season. In the 2017-2018 season, following a trophyless campaign, it was Pep's second season in charge of Manchester City, in which they went on to win the Premier League in absolutely dominant fashion, becoming the first team to record 100 points in a season and finishing 19 points clear of second-place Manchester United. You probably remember this absolute god squad of a team known as the Centurions, which featured the likes of Sergio Aguero, Raheem Sterling, KDB, David Silva, Vincent Kompany, to name just a few. All at their peak, this team was special. By the end of the season, they finished with a record of 32 wins, 4 draws, and only 2 losses, averaging 2.79 goals per game. And it's one thing just to get results, But it wasn't the fact that they won so much, it was the fashion in which they did so. Averaging 70% possession per game and a plus 79 goal differential, they only conceded 27 goals across the 38-match Premier League season. They clinched the title comfortably with 5 matches still to go in mid-April 2018. They would also go on to lift the EFL Cup, and though they lost in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, it was clear that this was only the beginning of a new era of Manchester City's dominance under Pep. The truth is, for a manager as great as Pep, a trophyless season is an anomaly, and it's very clear that he wants to right some of the wrongs of last season since he has added some new faces to his training staff. The second Pep, Pepin Linders, an assistant from Klopp's staff during his time at Liverpool, Kolo Touré, a former player and academy coach for Man City, and James French, Liverpool's former set-piece coach, have all been added to the bench. If that doesn't tell you that Pep has his eyes set on making major changes and revenge this season, then I'm not sure what's going to. Last season was extremely disappointing for City for a number of reasons, aside from the coach. Perhaps the most glaring of all was injuries, and just the overall inconsistencies in the squad across the season. Let's take a look back at Man City's starting 11 for match day 1 of the 24-25 season. Now, let's go ahead and compare this 11 to City's squad in their match against Juventus in the Club World Cup this past summer. To say the squad looks radically different this year is honestly an understatement. The biggest difference you'll notice is that Rodri is making his return. Even though he came back at the end of the previous season, he's had a full summer to recover and integrate himself back into the squad. There's no question that Man City being without their Ballon d'Or winner for pretty much the entirety of the 2024-25 season left a void in the middle of the park that was almost impossible to fill.
We cannot replace him. We cannot.
Couple that with the fact that Kevin De Bruyne, perhaps Man City's greatest ever player, has gone on to Napoli. His role will be filled with the likes of Tijani Reinders and Rayan Cherki. And of course, Rodri's back directing traffic in the center of the pitch and being that anchor at the heart of the squad. In attack, Pep now has an embarrassment of riches when it comes to how he wants his front line to look. Omar Marmoush, one of Europe's top players last season in terms of goals and assists, though he joined the club during the January transfer window, will now have an entire summer to acclimate and develop chemistry with all of his teammates. Jeremy Doku, one of the top wingers in all of Europe in terms of dribbles completed, only behind Lamine Yamal, Savinho, the return of Oscar Bob, who also spent most of last season injured, and of course, the best striker in the Premier League and arguably all of football today, Erling Haaland, who almost certainly would have claimed a third consecutive Golden Boot in the Prem had he not missed 8 matches due to injury near the end of the season. There's an argument to be made that the defense can still be looked at as somewhat of a weak point for Manchester City's squad this season, more specifically in between the posts. But with the arrival of James Trafford, the former Manchester City Academy keeper, to be the club's new number 1, this might be City's most stacked roster of players in some time. Pep seems to have built up a squad that could be totally injury-proof. With the amount of depth they currently have to show at each position, squad rotation will be welcomed and hopefully allow for all of City's key pieces to stay fit for their most important matchups against top comp in England and in the Champions League. This upcoming season is shaping up to be a good one, with 6 English clubs earning Champions League spots, but from my perspective, I think the 2 clubs in the best shape to contend for the Premier League title are Liverpool and Manchester City. Liverpool were absolutely incredible domestically last season in Arne Slot's first year with the club, but how much of that was really due to Manchester City somewhat taking a year off? Though one could argue clubs like Arsenal and Liverpool have made the splashier big-name signings in the summer transfer window, I do think that in terms of depth, Manchester City has the best squad from top to bottom. And in a long season filled with so many matches, it's not necessarily about who has the best starting 11, although there's an argument to be made that that belongs to Manchester City as well. It's really about who can stay the healthiest from the beginning of the season to season's end. Squad rotation and protecting your players' fitness is one of the most important tasks in the job of a manager. Pep already has a reputation as a manager who likes to rotate and use every single player he has at his disposal. So this amount of depth that Manchester City currently has is going to be quite the luxury for him. This time next summer, I predict we'll all be looking back at the 2024-2025 season for Man City as a massive fluke. With Pep Guardiola flirting with the idea of retiring pretty soon, I do think that after this season, they'll return to where they belong, near the very top of Europe. And Pep will remind everybody of exactly who he is.